Riverside, waiting on the person that gave me the video, our listener that gave me the video to I got everything good in here for you guys. So let me make sure. It could get a little darker. This is good. Do I need to turn the light on? I'm going to do it again. Sorry I didn't do it before. We're going to have a light check. Tell me if it's better. Is this better? Is this much better? If it is, let me know. I think we're okay for sure. But welcome in. I'm glad you guys are here. We've been doing all this series. We just finished some of the videos we did, and I think we've been putting out some here, West Coast Uncensored, really honing in on the Gnostic Gospels and the reality for a lot of us that I've talked to, and for me, is something I knew, but I know more. What I mean is a reality. When I start looking at this even more and more, when I start really paying attention to what this place is, what we see here. Let me put this up real quick as the truth. I'm sorry, I'm taking too long. I just want to add this on, which I should have did before. And this will be kind of where we've been. All right. All right. Sorry about that little fling and hurting to get it along. So let's get into this. I'm gonna play a video today. I haven't did that for a while. And I just wanted to share some stuff about that before we do. I've been really contemplating this when I look at what's happened, what I see, what I'm beholding, what I knew, but it's like the veil has even been rent more. When I look at us as humans, and we've been told through the Gnostic Gospels that you are the divine spark that's fallen from the highest realm. You are within you, that fell and is wrapped in a human body, avatar flesh. You, me. And I think about the system that we serve, and just more and more how with all when I look at this world, when I start really paying attention to what I see outside of me, and how everything is a psyop in order to get your attention outside of yourself. And I started looking at this. Think about this. We get religion, and it drives us outside of ourselves to find redemption. Religion. Exoteric religion. It doesn't matter which one it is. The recent one that we deal with, of course, is Christianity. Right? We go to school. We're taught to go to school. But that's to be followers, to remember some things and take a test, and you grade well when you remember what you've been told. It doesn't teach us to think for ourselves. It creates no critical thinking. You just become a follower. Somebody like a whistle and a dog runs. I'm just being honest. We're given everything from entertainment to keep us outside of ourselves. And everything's outside of ourselves. We're giving everything that we didn't create as being our reality. If that makes any more sense to you, is what I'm saying. We're told to go get married and have children, bear children. We're told that to go to a place that's better than here, heaven, that you have to obey these laws. Again, reiterating, find truth outside of yourself. And then everything about your country, you'll drop the truth of your religion to go ahead because you want to support war because your country needs to win the war because everybody else outside of your country, outside of you even, is the enemy, even the people. And you start looking, it's all wrapped up in distraction to keep ourselves from waking up to who we really are. And I'm going to call this name of this, the truth about you that's been hidden. The truth about you that's been hidden. Yeah, it's really been hidden. So you don't wake up and really realize the divine light and essence that you are. They gave us a religion and told us we had to become saved because we were no good. But the more and more I see it, that was a distraction to find something that you already are. You're divine from the highest states of being of who you are. You hold the essence of that which everything comes from. But yet, in this reality, you're taught to seek things outside of yourself. Everything outside of yourself is pushed as being what you need more than anything else. You're supposed to do this and supposed to do that, and it's all about following and being distracted. And heavy distraction is very much part of what's being pushed on us all the time. We got 24/7 media, 24/7 news, everything from political to everything. The world's messed up from wars, rumors of wars, all these things, right? And then all the suffering that's here that doesn't go away. All the suffering, continual suffering that's here. You make yourself suffer by negative thoughts, even to that lowest point, besides getting physically injured or loved ones dying. Then you miss them. Then you're sad. I'm just looking at every aspect of what we see here has a suffering aspect, a distractive aspect to keep you from knowing you. And then I think about how hell is where there's gnashing of teeth, fear and gnashing of teeth. Gnashing means we get that because of the anger of we have so much fear. And then the fear causes that. Makes sense of what this place really is. When we look at who we are as being, you talk about hiding ancient knowledges in the Vatican in some kind of underground library or some kind of underground tunnels or some secret chambers that they have this knowledge, right? This ancient knowledge hidden from us. But then they try to hide us from us and are very effective with it. In a recent video, I believe the last one or the one before that, the last one, I talked about the Hylics, the psychics, and the pneumatics. Kind of like an outer, kind of inner, and holy place. The Trinity. And how the differentiation of them from the pneumatics were them who were using this gnosis to be their leader. To the point of we need an activation of our higher self or that spark, that divine spark within. So I started looking at this. This video I found goes kind of what I was thinking and looking at, that spark of light that came. So I'm going to share a video, which I will definitely lead, right? I'm going to share it. We're at the 10-minute mark. This is about a 28-minute video, so it's not a short one for sure. All right. As long as I can keep my stuff here and can control it, we will be fine.
Since the very beginning, someone made a decision for you. Before you even took your first breath, before you ever asked a single question, the rules were already written. You were handed a world where God was somewhere far away, untouchable, unreachable, and you were just a small, broken thing. That's not your fault. You were dropped into a system designed to keep you small, a system that taught you from day one to kneel, to beg, to believe that power only existed outside of you. It's fact. Look around. Every major institution that shaped civilizations, ancient empires, organized religions, royal bloodlines, they all pushed the same narrative: you are powerless without them. Priests stood between you and divinity. Kings ruled by divine right. Every law, every book, every ceremony was built to hammer it into your mind: you are less. And if you even dared to think otherwise, you were branded a heretic, a traitor, a danger to the natural order. That was the real crime, not rebellion against society, but rebellion against the idea that you were ever meant to be anything more than obedient. Think about it. Why would such massive systems spend centuries inventing punishments for people who questioned? Why burn libraries? Why erase entire civilizations? The Gospel of Thomas, the teachings of the Gnostics, ancient Vedic truths, Taoist insights, messages that screamed, "You are divine," weren't just ignored. They were hunted. They were ripped out of history on purpose. Because if you knew the truth, if you knew that the power you've been begging for your whole life was already inside you, the entire game would collapse overnight. You would no longer need kings. You would no longer need middlemen in temples. You would no longer buy into the story that salvation is something you have to earn, or that your life is a waiting room for a reward after death. And you feel it, don't you? That pressure in your gut when you're told to just have faith without ever being allowed to ask real questions. That rage you feel when you're made to believe that your dreams, your instincts, your own spirit aren't enough. That's not confusion. That's the part of you that still remembers the truth fighting to breathe. Because deep down, underneath all the conditioning, you know you weren't made to be a slave. You weren't made to be less. The evidence is right there if you're willing to see it. In ancient Egypt, the concept of the Ka and the Ba spoke of a soul that wasn't owned by any god, it was the divine essence. In the Vedas, the Atman is not separate from Brahman, it is Brahman. In Taoism, the Tao flows through all things, not above them. In the Gnostic texts, the real creator isn't the angry god who demands worship, but the silent, infinite source you carry within your own being. Across every culture that dared to look inward instead of upward, the pattern is the same: you were never supposed to worship. You were supposed to awaken. But you were never told that. Instead, you were trained like a dog to sit, to stay, to pray to something outside yourself and wait. Wait for forgiveness. Wait for blessings. Wait for permission to feel worthy. And while you waited, generation after generation, the truth was buried under monuments of fear. You're not here to be small. You're not here to apologize for existing. The reason this knowledge was hidden, crushed, and demonized isn't because it was false. It's because it was too powerful. Because the moment you realize you are not separate from the divine, you stop being controllable. You stop being profitable. You stop being manageable. And the entire house of cards they built on your submission crumbles to dust. You are not a sinner waiting for grace. You are not a subject waiting for approval. You are not a soul trapped in some cosmic test you have to pass. You are a being of divine power, walking this world in a body that was always meant to remember, not to forget. And the truth they fear the most is the truth you were born to live: you are God. You need to understand something most people never get taught. Long before today's religions locked everything down, before governments controlled your thoughts, there were people who knew the truth about human divinity, and they lived it openly. They didn't ask permission. They didn't wonder if they were good enough. They built their entire lives around one undeniable fact: the spark of the absolute was inside them. And they left proof all over the world. You've just never been shown where to look. Take ancient Egypt. They weren't obsessed with death like textbooks keep repeating. They were obsessed with immortality. Not in some mystical, wishful way, but because they believed the divine essence already lived inside them. The pharaoh wasn't just a ruler. He wasn't worshipped as a king because he was powerful. He was seen as an embodiment of divinity itself. The rituals, the monuments, the entire structure of their civilization was built around the idea that you become divine by realizing you already are. Now jump over to the Indus Valley. The Upanishads, texts that predate almost every major Western scripture, don't talk about praying to an outside god. They focus on piercing through the illusion, on realizing that the self, the Atman, is not different from the ultimate reality, Brahman. They say it straight: your true self is not separate from the source. There's no gap, no middleman. It's a direct identity. That's not interpretation. That's not a stretch. That's written in their most sacred texts, word for word. Move forward to the Taoist masters in China. They weren't sitting around trying to please some supreme being. They were focused on aligning with the Tao, the ultimate, indescribable flow of existence, not by worship, but by realizing you are the Tao in motion. When Lao Tzu says, knowing others is intelligence, knowing yourself is true wisdom, he's not handing out some greeting card slogan. He's pointing at the door that modern culture keeps locked, knowing yourself as divine power, not as some broken thing begging for mercy. You ever wonder why these ideas never made it into your school textbooks? Why you grew up thinking humanity was fallen, sinful, incomplete? It's not because these teachings were minor footnotes in history. It's because they were dangerous to the structures that depended on your obedience. Systems built on fear can't survive people who know they are divine. They can't survive individuals who refuse to beg for what they already possess. And it gets even clearer when you look at the indigenous cultures that colonial forces steamrolled. The Lakota, the Hopi, the Maori, all had spiritual systems recognizing the inherent sacredness of every individual, not just a select few.
This is insane.
So, like,
I know, dang.
Yeah.
Nobody needed to earn their divine connection. It was an assumed reality. You were expected to live it. But when colonizers showed up, one of the first things they attacked was that knowledge. They weren't just stealing land or resources, they were stealing identity. They were erasing the idea that the divine lived in every human being they conquered. Every time and place where humans stood up and said, "We are divine," they were crushed. Every system that taught direct access to divine identity without permission, without priests, without rulers, was burned, banned, or rewritten beyond recognition. You were meant to inherit that legacy. You were meant to know that you are part of an unbroken line of human beings who carried this knowledge before it was ripped away. The Gnostics didn't just stumble onto some random philosophy. They uncovered a raw, explosive truth that threatened the very foundation of the world around them. They weren't worshipping some external deity. They were exposing the fact that what most people called God wasn't the true source at all. It was a counterfeit. A usurper. A manipulative being called the Demiurge, who created a fake reality designed to trap and control souls. And they didn't just theorize about it. They mapped it out. They wrote it down. They risked everything to pass it forward. When you hear Gnostic texts talk about the false god, they're not being metaphorical. They are identifying an actual consciousness, a being who set up this rigged system we live in. According to them, this world, with all its pain, death, suffering, fear, is not the original creation of the highest source. It's a cheap knockoff built by lesser beings who wanted to control rather than create. And the kicker? These false rulers didn't have the power to make life from nothing. They had to steal a piece of the true divine, your essence, to animate their fake world. You, right now, carry that stolen fragment. They called it the divine spark. It's not a theory. It's the very thing that makes you conscious. The very thing that makes you different from the machine-like systems you're trapped inside. And they went even further, saying salvation doesn't come from obedience, ritual, or faith. It comes from knowledge. From gnosis. From remembering who you were before you were shoved into this prison. You've been taught to worship the architect of your prison. You've been trained to love the very system that keeps you chained. That's not a mistake. That's by design. The demiurge, according to Gnostic understanding, operates by deception and fear. It thrives on ignorance. The less you know about your true nature, the easier you are to manipulate. And entire systems were created to keep you too busy, too scared, too ashamed to ever stop and look inside yourself. The Gnostic Gospel of Thomas doesn't tell you to bow to anything outside you. It says, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize you are the children of the living Father. That's not an invitation to join a religion. That's a call to wake up. To rip down the illusion with your own hands. Gnostic movements spread fast and wide because people recognized the truth when they heard it. It resonated. It shook the core of everything they'd been forced to believe. That's why Rome didn't just debate them, they exterminated them. That's why the early Christian councils didn't just disagree with them, they buried their writings, labeled them heretics, and burned their knowledge. Not because the Gnostics were wrong, but because they were dangerous. Dangerous to every empire, every religious hierarchy, every institution that needed you to stay small, broken, and obedient. They weren't offering a new religion. They were pointing to the fact that no religion, no priest, no external savior is needed. That the power you've been conditioned to search for is already embedded inside your existence. You are carrying a piece of the true source itself, buried underneath layers of fear, guilt, and control mechanisms designed to keep you asleep. Once the elites realized how dangerous this knowledge was, they didn't waste a second. They didn't sit around arguing about philosophy, they declared total war on anyone who even hinted that humans were divine. This wasn't some casual disagreement over spiritual opinions. This was organized, calculated suppression, executed with brutal precision. They burned books, they hunted down teachers, they labeled entire groups as heretics to justify wiping them off the face of the earth. Not because those people were a threat to society, but because they were a threat to the entire power structure that kept kings on thrones and priests at the altars. Look at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. They didn't gather to understand God better. They gathered to consolidate control. They decided which texts would survive and which would disappear forever. They handpicked the narratives that made you powerless, and anything that even hinted you could access divinity directly got cut out. Gnostic Gospels, ancient wisdom traditions, entire movements, all of it buried, banned, declared dangerous. They made sure that every surviving document hammered the same message into your head: you are broken, you are fallen, and you need them to save you. They didn't stop with censorship. They created entire political and military campaigns to enforce it. The Albigensian Crusade is one of the most glaring examples. The Cathars, who openly taught that the divine was within every human and that the physical world was a trap created by a false god, were completely annihilated. Men, women, and children all slaughtered because they dared to teach what today would be labeled as ultimate empowerment. The official church didn't debate them. They burned their cities to the ground. Same with the so-called witch hunts across Europe. Thousands, maybe millions, of people, many of them women, tortured and killed under the excuse that they were practicing heresy. But what they were really doing was preserving old, indigenous knowledge about direct connection to the divine, nature, and spirit without any middleman. You were never supposed to have a direct line to power. You were supposed to be kept in fear, on your knees, generation after generation. And when they weren't using violence, they used rewriting. Ancient myths were sanitized, inverted, and rebranded. Figures who once symbolized wisdom and rebellion against false authority were twisted into villains. Think about the serpent in Genesis. In earlier traditions, the serpent was a symbol of wisdom, of awakening. But once the control systems took over, that symbol was flipped into an enemy of humanity. Same with Prometheus, who brought fire, knowledge, to mankind and was punished for it. Over and over, the same pattern: knowledge that empowers you is demonized, and ignorance is sold as virtue. While the Western world built towers of fear around human nature, the thinkers behind Advaita Vedanta broke every illusion down to its core. They didn't say you could become divine if you worked hard enough. They didn't say you might be saved if you played by the rules. They made it crystal clear: you already are the ultimate reality, you just forgot. Go back to the ancient Indian texts, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita. Over and over, they hammer the same truth: the Atman, your individual self, is not separate from Brahman, the absolute infinite reality. They're not talking about some metaphor. They're not suggesting a poetic idea. They are stating a fact: there is no line between you and the source. No priest needed. No ritual required. No middleman cashing in on your fear. You are the infinite, walking in a temporary form. The phrase that gets repeated over and over is Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. Not you can be that. Not you should try to be that. You are that. Right now. Whether you believe it or not doesn't change it. Whether you feel it or not doesn't change it. The truth doesn't need your permission to exist. And the evidence for this truth isn't hidden behind complicated religious rituals. It's built into the very structure of your consciousness. Advaita Vedanta teaches that when you strip away everything, your name, your story, your memories, your fears, what's left isn't a blank space. What's left is pure awareness. And that pure awareness isn't yours personally. It's universal. It's the same awareness looking out of every set of eyes on this planet. That's why individuality, the ego, the obsession with separate identity, is seen as the core illusion, the thing that keeps you locked inside the small box built for you. It's not hard to see why this teaching never made it into the mainstream curriculum. You can't control people who know they're already complete. You can't sell salvation to someone who already recognizes themselves as the source. You can't manipulate, scare, or rule over individuals who realize the entire external structure of authority is fake at its root. Advaita Vedanta doesn't waste time trying to reform the system. It tells you to see through it. It doesn't ask you to fight the prison guards. It shows you that the prison itself is made of illusions you don't have to accept. Once you know that the Atman is Brahman, the whole game collapses. The story of separation, hierarchy, dependency, it all unravels. And the people who lived and breathed this knowledge didn't just sit around thinking about it. They built their lives around it. The sages, the yogis, the seers, they didn't seek approval from kings or priests. They lived on the edges of the system because they knew the system had nothing left to offer once you wake up. They didn't need temples filled with gold. They didn't need armies to defend their truth. Taoism didn't show up to give you another belief system to memorize. It came to expose the hard truth: the self you think you are, the one obsessed with survival, approval, success, is a cheap mask. A fake identity built on fear and competition. Taoist masters didn't tell people to find God outside. They pointed straight to the reality that you are already part of the fundamental flow of existence. You were never separate. You just got tricked into thinking you were. The Tao, according to ancient Chinese teachings, isn't some far-off entity handing out rewards and punishments. It's the core energy that moves everything, and you are already an expression of it. You don't need permission to align with the Tao because you are the Tao in form. Lao Tzu made it painfully clear: the more you chase control, the further you move from your true nature. The more you try to conform, to impress, to dominate, the more you bury the real power that was always inside you. Look at the way the system raised you. You were trained to build an identity out of achievements, titles, social approval. But Taoism calls that out immediately: it's all ego. And the ego isn't just a bad habit, it's the #1 weapon used to keep you stuck in the illusion that you're small, fragile, disconnected. The fake self, what society wants you to think you are, is obsessed with status, validation, survival. Meanwhile, your real self couldn't care less about any of it. Your real self doesn't need to prove anything because it's already inseparable from the source. Taoism doesn't try to fix the fake world. It shows you how to step out of it altogether. The Tao Te Ching isn't a list of commandments. It's a direct breakdown of the trap. Stop clinging, stop forcing, stop pretending. Start noticing that life moves perfectly without your panic, without your obsession to control. Rivers flow, trees grow, stars burn, all without a single prayer or ceremony. You are no different. The life force inside you doesn't need saving. It needs remembering. And the proof isn't hidden in some mystical ritual. It's right here in how your body works, how nature works, how everything flows when you stop trying to control it. You breathe without thinking about it. Your heart beats without you commanding it. Life unfolds not because of you, but through you. The Tao operates inside you every second, and it never asked for your permission. Taoist sages didn't gather armies or build empires. They didn't need cathedrals or thrones. They saw straight through the game and walked away from it. They lived close to nature because nature wasn't created by an external god, it is the Tao in action. Just like you are. When the ego dissolves, when the fake mask is dropped, you don't become weak, you become unstoppable. You're no longer wasting energy protecting a false image. You move directly with the power that makes galaxies spin and oceans move. The archons aren't myths. They're not metaphors. They're real forces that have been feeding off human ignorance and fear since the beginning of organized civilization. You weren't born into a neutral world. You were born into a system built by entities whose entire existence depends on keeping you asleep to your own power. Gnostic texts didn't describe the archons as cartoon villains. They described them as rulers of the material world, parasites that manipulate thought, emotion, and perception to trap consciousness inside a broken reality. The archons can't create anything real. They don't have that kind of power. What they do instead is hijack what already exists. They take your thoughts and twist them. They take your instincts and poison them. They build fake authority structures, political, religious, economic, designed to keep you busy, scared, obedient. Every time you feel like you're drowning in fear, guilt, or self-doubt, it's not just random emotional chaos. It's the system doing exactly what it was programmed to do, break you down before you ever remember who you really are. Look at how every major system around you works. School teaches you to memorize, obey, conform. Religion teaches you that salvation is outside yourself. Governments teach you that rights come from rulers, not from your existence. Media teaches you that you're not good enough until you buy, consume, perform. These aren't accidental patterns. They are iconic mechanisms, built to harvest your life force and turn you into a compliant, self-doubting cog in their machine. And the worst trick they pull? Making you believe that the trap is normal. That suffering is just how life is. That it's noble to struggle and beg for scraps of happiness. Meanwhile, the real joy, the real power, the real freedom that belongs to you as a divine being gets buried under mountains of fake responsibilities and endless distractions. The ancient Gnostics described how the archons use imitation to keep control. They don't create truth, they manufacture copies. Fake religions that sound spiritual but keep you powerless. Fake governments that claim to protect you but feed on your energy. Fake movements that promise liberation but deliver new cages. Every time you think you've found something real, they dangle another illusion just convincing enough to keep you chasing your tail. And they never fight you head-on. That's not how they work. They flood your mind with doubts, fears, artificial desires. They overload your nervous system so you're too busy surviving to even question the ground you're standing on. They don't want you dead. They want you alive, distracted, drained, and too exhausted to remember that you were born carrying the full force of the true source inside you. You can see the proof everywhere if you stop accepting their storylines. Why else would ancient spiritual systems that taught direct empowerment be erased, outlawed, or twisted into hierarchical control structures? Why else would questioning authority get you labeled as dangerous. The Archonic system doesn't fear violence, it fears awareness. It fears you waking up and realizing you were never supposed to bow, beg, or obey. Every moment you doubt yourself, every moment you shrink back from your own strength, every moment you second-guess your instincts, that's not weakness. That's the system at work. The real you, underneath the programming, is untouchable. But they can't reach that part directly. They have to trick you into locking yourself up. Across every generation, there have been people who broke through the system. People who refused to believe the story they were handed. They didn't find freedom by begging some distant authority. They didn't earn their power by following endless rules. They shattered the illusion because they realized the forbidden truth: you don't become divine, you uncover that you always were. You don't wait for permission, you wake up and take back what was always yours. This awakening isn't a fantasy. It's a biological, psychological, and spiritual revolt against everything that's been done to you. The forbidden flame they tried to bury isn't something external you need to search for. It's the core of your own existence, your consciousness, your awareness, your undeniable life force. It's the one thing they can't fully control. It's the one thing that, once activated, makes you unstoppable. Look around at the few individuals in history who made real change. The ones who broke the chains, who sparked revolutions of thought, who defied empires. They all had one thing in common: they stopped waiting. They stopped asking. They realized that power wasn't something handed down from a throne or a pulpit. It was already built into their existence. They remembered what everyone else had been trained to forget. That same force is burning inside you. Right now. It doesn't care about your background, your education, your social status. It doesn't care how many times you've been told you're not enough. None of that matters. Because the spark doesn't come from external validation. It comes from reality itself, from the raw fact that your existence is proof of your connection to the source. You don't need new rituals. You don't need more lectures about how broken you are. You need to recognize that every layer of fear, guilt, and doubt stacked on you was never yours to carry. Every system built to make you feel small was built on one foundation: the terror that you might one day realize you were never small to begin with. And once you realize it, it doesn't just change how you see the world. It changes the game entirely. You stop operating from fear. You stop waiting for salvation. You stop seeing yourself as a pawn in someone else's rigged game. You start living as the architect of your own reality, connected directly to the infinite force that moves everything. This is why they fought so hard to keep you distracted. This is why they burned, banned, and buried anything that pointed back to you. Because when you stop chasing shadows and start standing in your own power, there is nothing they can do. No law, no system, no propaganda strong enough to enslave a mind that knows it is sovereign. You are the forbidden flame they never wanted lit. You are the key they tried to throw away. You are the power they fear because it was never theirs to control. It was always yours. And now it's your time to remember. Thank you for watching this video until the end. You are not just a passive listener, you're a part of this awakening. Your attention, your energy, your willingness to question everything is exactly what this world needs more than ever. Stay strong, stay sharp, and never forget who you truly are.
My gosh, God, my gosh. Good one. Definitely. Definitely a good one. Powerful, guys. Very powerful. Let me stop this share. Kicked me out again. It's something about with the videos, it's kicking me out. But anyways, very powerful. We're over the 40-minute mark. And this is what I was talking about to lead in. The reality is, that's why I said the truth is about you is that it was hidden from you. But now you've awakened, discovered you're the priceless, or you're your God. No, don't you know that ye are gods? You guys have a great, great day.